So here we are, we're back up at Almoree. It's September the 5th. It's not a bad day actually for September after a weekend's deluge for most people. But what I was thinking there, and I brought the book purposely up, was this book called Children of the Dead. Sorry, Children of the Dead End by Patrick McGills. It was a book I read a couple of years ago, maybe more, and it reduced me to tears when I got to the final stages of the book, and that's not a joke. It's over 300 pages, this book, but it's a fascinating story, particularly it's true. Now, I touched the subject previously and ended up talking about Rannoch and Kinlochleven and all that sort of stuff, so a sideline away from the actual book itself. I'm not going to give you too much information because that will spoil it if you do pick up the book. Let me just show you it again. And as I say, it's a true story. It's about the Irish people, immigrants coming over for work back in the late 19th century, early 20th century, desperate for work, desperate for money, and they're treated like absolutely like shite by the landowners and the farmers and stuff during the tatty pick and the potato harvesting, you see. And a lot of this took place down in Ayrshire. And they were simply made to live with like sleep in pigsties, men and women and children. It was just awful. And the guy goes into some detail writing about it. He also goes on to mention about the travels and the troubles and walking the roads of Scotland and trying to eke out a living when there wasn't none. And sadly, a lot of people died on the roads. And when you're in the Scottish glens, apart from the Highland clearances which took place, there's a certain sadness. Anyone who's involved in hill walking will understand that the glens in Scotland have got a certain emotion about them. Once you're on the tops, it doesn't seem to be that way, but if you imagine what it's like when you're travelling through Glencoe, and that feeling of how dramatic, and in certain days, depending on your own sensitivities and how you pick up vibes and stuff, you can certainly feel the sadness coming through Glencoe for what happened. But that's just one glen, but it's kind of multiplied over many glens in Scotland. And even here, previously on the periphery of the Breadalbane estate, the last exhaust of the Breadalbanes, where they came through Glenquaich, this was all their land, and over to Glenalmond, and all these glens were cleared. Over in Glenalmond, there's still a lot of evidence of the houses and hamlets, the shielings and stuff, and that's multiplied right across the land. It's really awful. Really awful, and nothing's ever talked about it. It's just a sad thing. But that situation about the Highland clearances, this is not covered in this book as such. But what I'm saying is, people who are homeless and destitute and having to sleep. I mean, the guy describes sleeping in teeming rain under a hedge and stuff, and they had to take shelter where they could. They didn't have any tents or Gore-Tex waterproofs or things like that. It's a really, really hard, sad story. Particularly, there's a romantic, romantic involvement with somebody from Ireland who also came over and sadly ended up in prostitution in Glasgow. And this is back at the early 20th century. So it was just horrendous when he found out, and it broke his heart and stuff. But as I say, it's a true story, and because of the story, what happened after I was reduced to tears, next morning, or next afternoon at least, whatever time it was anyway, I must have waited till, I think I would have waited till 6 o'clock at night or something, because I definitely phoned Los Angeles. I phoned Sean Penn's offices, his agent. That's what I did. I contacted them in California, and I was asked, some details about myself and what the purpose of the call was. So the person in the front line put me through to the agent, and the agent themselves was pretty keen on my story. The reason I brought it to Sean Penn was because he had done such a marvellous job with the story about Chris McCandless. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story, the book about Into the Wild, where this young man in America gives up everything and literally, goes rural, goes completely on his own, picking up work. He came from a very wealthy family with good parents and good schooling, but he decided to give up everything. And it details the story of his life as a young man before he decided he was going to go to Alaska. And everyone will be familiar with the story if they've read the book or even seen the film Into the Wild, where he takes refuge in an old school bus, which is parked up in an old mining area in Alaska. And he eats off the land, and he's doing all right. But what had happened is when he decided it was time to return to civilization, he couldn't get back over the river, so they're all in spate. And he was at a point of desperation with hunger. And unfortunately, it was the last 3 months of his life, he starved to death. It's a really sad story. It's actually a true story as well. But what happened was Sean Penn had approached the family asking to do a film about the thing, the whole event, and they turned him down. They turned him down for 10 years solid. And this is why I often hark on about the need for perseverance in people's lives, because, he respected the family's wishes. He did not approach them every week, but he certainly went back and asked them. And as time passed, they eventually agreed that he could make the movie. And the movie is absolutely fantastic. The casting in this movie is absolutely wonderful, and the whole thing that Sean Penn done is real merit to the man. It really is. So based on this Into the Wild, I brought the Sean Penn's agent to the attention of this story from the book Children of the Dead by Patrick McGills. Now, they did ask me if I had any personal involvement in this, and I said none whatsoever. I said I'd purchased the book and read it, and I know he'd done such a good job with Into the Wild, I thought he would be interested. Now, all the time this was happening, there's lots of questions asked and lots of conversation. It wasn't a 5-minute conversation, it went on for quite a while. And I was absolutely 100% convinced that sitting in the same room as the agent, perhaps even across the table, was Sean Penn himself. I just got, I worked in an insurance industry where I was constantly on the phones, and you get a feel for people as you're speaking to them, sometimes 8 hours a day, different customers. And as a result of that, you can pick up people when they're, let's say, when they're, the voice tone and stuff, when they're maybe being untruthful, or maybe not being as friendly as they could, or even just the awareness that somebody else is probably present in the room with them. That's the truth. So I was absolutely convinced that Sean Penn was there. And anyway, the strange thing was, the agent said, well, what we'll do, we'll look at everything you've said and we'll make a decision. And I think that Sean Penn was actually sitting there listening to what's going on, and perhaps nodding his head and stuff. But coming from me, this is probably one of these crazy things that I do. remember we're talking about Sean Penn here, but I suggested to the agent if he had any troubles obtaining the book to maybe look on eBay. And I think I actually just cooked the whole story just by saying that, because it was a stupid thing to come out, but I don't know why I said it. I think I was trying to be helpful, thinking it might not be a book that you could obtain easily, because I got it on eBay. And and a man of Sean Penn's means would probably one phone call to some literary shop in New York. Could you put a book on a flight for me tonight, please? I want this book. I sincerely hope he did read the book. I rather hope. And let's talk about perseverance. Maybe it's worthwhile me phoning them back to see if they made any decisions on it. But if not, I might actually look in some way or method to getting this story put to film. That would be a real accomplishment for me. So hopefully you can pick up this book sometime. And I'm sure, like myself, you will be reduced to tears when you understand this story and its outcome.